I think we are live. Hi, Danielle. Are we good to go, Jake? Live indeed.
Great.
Okay, awesome. Um, Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Lewis. Welcome to In the Room with our, it's a specific to SONA songwriter conversation series that we present, that Songwriters of North America presents, otherwise known as SONA. I'm Michelle Lewis. I am the CEO of SONA and the SONA Foundation. I'm also a songwriter. And we are so thrilled to have with us today to speak with my dear friend, Danielle Aguirre. She's the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of NMPA. I'm just going to talk about you a little bit like you're not here, Danielle. I'm just going to brag on you for a bit. As Executive
Thanks,
VP and GC, Danielle oversees NMPA's legal, business, and policy objectives. Her role is to protect and enforce copyrights and the intellectual property interests of songwriters and music publishers. She It's funny because in your bio it says you aggressively combat digital piracy and infringement litigation and infringement litigating on behalf of NMPA's members. Aggressively is like, I feel like that's apt. You're
appropriate.
a
Yeah.
fight. Yeah, you are a fighter. And we're so and I think because we're in the middle of a fight, it's so great to have you here because I think you can break this down for songwriters in a way that could be really helpful and powerful for us. It also just, educational as well. So thank you for being
Well, thank
here.
you. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So good, so good. Um, I'm hoping right now it's quiet, so I'm outside in Valley Village, California. It's lovely. Where are you
I
visiting
am in
from?
my office in Washington, D.C., which is where we're based. We travel a lot to be
Yeah.
near the songwriters and music publishers we represent, but today I am in my office in downtown D.C.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. Um, we are going to be talking about Spotify. How long have you been at NMPA? I forgot to ask you about that.
Almost 14 years. Almost 14
Whoa.
years. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I
Wow.
started at the beginning of 2011, which, by the way, maybe a coincidence, is the year that Spotify launched their service here in the United States. So I have been dealing
Yeah.
with them since day one in the
I
US.
feel like I feel like because I got here, and here being the battlefield of trade associations and creators arts fighting um in 2015, 2016. And I feel like Spotify has kind of been the problem child ever since
Well,
I
they
got here.
have.
So
It's
yeah.
sad. It's sad, right? Because they're the largest music service in the
Hmm.
US. And because of that, I think we all assumed and hoped that they would be a true partner in
Right.
growing the industry, making our industry better, helping songwriters and music publishers and artists and labels and everybody. And instead, I feel like we have consistently fought with them over fundamental things like how much they pay since I've been at NMPA. And that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah, since I've been doing this too, it's always been specifically about them. And they're at it again. Spotify is Spotifying,
That's right.
specifically,
I like
in,
that.
in
Spotify is Spotifying. That is, in fact, exactly what's happening.
like that's what they're getting. That's what they're gonna do. I feel like we had a little bit of a truce worked out for a while, but that's now not the case. Can you give us a little bit of history about how we got here? Like, we were in this kind of let's talk about well, yeah, let's walk through the history of this issue of where we
Yeah.
are now.
Well, so look, a lot of this comes out of the fact that songwriters and music publishers are in what's called a compulsory license for our mechanical rights. And those are the rights for when people make copies and then distribute those copies. And in particular here, it's for interactive streaming like Spotify's music service. So what that means is they can go to a three judge panel every 5 years and litigate against us, like as if it's a trial. And they get to set rates in that trial. And we either can settle that or we go to the judges and the judges decide. And then that's what they pay. And we don't get to say, no, you can't use our things. We don't get to negotiate in a free market. What we do is we have to let them use our musical works and our songs as long as they pay. What we don't get to do is sit down with them in a market and negotiate a license, like, for instance, the record labels get to do. And so that's
Right.
the context around a lot of this, right? We're
Right.
overshadowed by a lot of government regulation. We can't negotiate in a free market. And so we have had a number of trials where we spent a lot of money litigating against Spotify, who has consistently tried to lower the royalty rates that they pay to songwriters by seeking to the lowest rates in history that they did in the last proceeding in 2018. And then when we actually
Right.
got a rate increase in that proceeding, they appealed. And we
Right.
spent 6 years litigating an appeal. And so after all of that, we finally got to a settlement in the most recent proceeding that sets our royalty rates, which was back in 2022 for the start of 2023. And so
Right.
that's where we all started. And those rates included a category that allowed for bundling of products. We
Right.
don't,
And
yes,
and
go ahead.
just to clarify one thing, which is this particular revenue stream is the streaming mechanical, and this is different. I just want songwriters to understand that this is different from the performance money that they
That's
get
right.
from their PROs. This
That's right.
is the money that they'll see, say, either through their publishers or through the MLC, as
That's right.
opposed to the money that they will see from ASCAP BMI. You want to just talk a little more about like the difference and also
Yeah,
how the difference in
absolutely.
how those rates are set, right? You told us
Absolutely.
how the mechanical side is set, but is there a little bit of a difference with the PRO side?
Yeah, I mean, the PROs also, especially ASCAP and BMI, have some government regulation as well. I mean, we really, for such a small industry, the smallest part of the music industry, we have a lot of government regulation, which makes it hard to negotiate fair rates and terms. But on the performance side, that's where ASCAP and BMI or CSAC and GMR, whichever PRO you are with as a songwriter, they would negotiate those rates with Spotify, and then you would receive your royalties from those PROs.
Right.
Mechanical, on the other hand, is really for the reproduction and distribution, so copying, which is made during interactive streaming. And as you said, that flows through the MLC. If you are a self-published, then you'll get paid directly by the MLC, or it would flow from the MLC to your publisher, and then as a songwriter, you'd be paid by your publisher for those works.
Right. Okay. So that's the pool that we're talking about specifically is the publishing
Yes.
side, right? And so now let's go into this bundling issue.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. In our last trial to set these rates, these mechanical rates, we settled and we had the highest royalty rates that we've ever had. So we were pretty happy about that. But one of the things that we did have, which we had to have because the judges imposed it in the last trial, so we knew if we had gone to trial, they would have given us a bundle, was a bundle category. And what that essentially means is that digital services like Spotify or Apple or Amazon can bundle their music subscription service with something else. Every other digital service has done this in a way that the purpose of the bundle category is to benefit everyone, right? It's supposed to grow value. So maybe I don't like to subscribe to a music service, but if my music service is bundled with Apple TV, I'll subscribe to Apple Music and Apple TV as a bundle. and I get to pay a little bit less, but at least I'm becoming a subscriber, and that benefits us in the music industry, that benefits Apple on its TV side, and it's supposed to benefit everyone. It's supposed to grow the value for everyone. And every
Right.
other DSP understands this, right? They take a
Right.
legitimate two things, right? Like Apple does a bundle with their TV and their Apple Music, or Apple Fitness
Amazon.
and their Amazon does it for Amazon Prime. Like, we
Hmm.
know a lot of areas where this happens, but it's happening with legitimate services that these companies run and that are successful all by themselves, self-standing services that they then bundle to get new customers to come in and pay. And that's
Right.
great.
Because the consumer sees a discount on both sides. They're going to see a
Exactly.
discount on their Prime subscription and a discount on their streaming subscription, and we'll get the right. And that in turn flows through at a discounted rate in royalties, right? That's
Right.
what and there's a formula for that.
But in those situations, let's remember those digital services have a music service, they have another service, and then they have this bundle, and they're offering it to people, right? They don't automatically make people take the bundle. What they're saying is, if you're in the music service and you're in this other service, you can choose to go into this new bundle we've created, or you don't. You just stay in the music service, you pay as you've always paid, and then we Apple or whoever DSP, we pay songwriters and publishers as we've always paid. That is not what Spotify has done here.
Right. So tell us the difference of now what
Yeah,
Spotify is doing.
let's get into what Spotify did and why this is different, because there is a really important difference here. What Spotify did was essentially manipulate this bundle category and make up a new offering, what they're calling their audiobooks offering. The sole purpose of that offering is to lower the royalty rates they pay to music publishers and songwriters, and I'll explain why. Last November, Spotify had their music service. If you're a music subscriber to Spotify, they have just their regular premium subscription service, or maybe they have their family plan if you have a family and you're subscribed to that. And in that, you maybe noticed last November that they offered for free 15 hours of audiobook listening. They said, hey, for free, we're going to give this as part of our music premium service that you're subscribing to, and you'll just see it show up. And you did. And they had that for about 5 months. And then what they realized was, well, if we just say that audiobook 15 hours is a separate offering, then we can call what we've just done a bundle. And by doing that, we can lower the royalties that we have to pay on the music side to music publishers and songwriters. And that's what they did. What they did is they pulled that 15 hours of audiobook that they were offering for free, and they said, as of March 1, that it was its own separate offering. It didn't have, as far as we know, any separate subscribers. They didn't promote it anywhere. As a matter of fact, it was really hard to even find on Spotify's site. But what they said to the MLC and to publishers was, we now have two separate offerings. We've bundled them. We're not giving our 44 million subscribers a choice. We're automatically converting them all into this bundle. They don't get to choose it. We're just calling them bundles now. That's not what they subscribe to, but that's what we're going to call them. And now, because of that, we're saying we can lower the revenue that we say is due to music publishers and songwriters, and we can lower the royalties we have to pay to you. And that was fraudulent. And
Right.
everybody knew it. I mean, not only is it because they made up a separate offering that just for the purposes of calling it a bundle, but the only place that they offered this was in the United States, because this is the only country where they are able to do this with a bundle. It's as simple as that. And so what happened was the MLC caught on to this immediately and said, this is not a legitimate bundle. This is absolutely a manipulation of the regulations and of your royalty obligations. You owe more money. And they sued Spotify on May 16th in federal court in New York. And what they
So
said was,
the MLC
oh,
literally got a lower payment.
oh, they MLC, they reported to the MLC, and what they reported in March was, hey, in February, we owed you, this much money. In March, we're now calling all of our subscribers in the United States bundles, and we owe you 20% less. Now, 20%, does that matter? It absolutely does. It is almost $150 million a year in lower royalties that they would pay to the songwriting industry because of this reclassification. And the MLC knew it was fraudulent and they sued them, which they should have. And hopefully the federal court will see this for what it is, which is just not a legitimate bundle, but a ploy to reduce royalties.
Wow. Um, so okay, so the judges who the CRB judges who basically gave this ruling of how this formula would work, it, did they have any role in enforcement?
So they don't have a role in enforcement. They set the rates and terms. I mean, part of the problem with being in this compulsory license is if we all were able to negotiate in a market and we had voluntary licenses, we'd have protections. We
Right,
could go
right,
to court right away and say, you're violating our contract. This is not what our contract says. This is a little bit more complicated, right? These three
right,
judges sitting here in DC where I am, they approve, they either set the rates or they approve these settlements, and then we go back to them in 5 years
right,
and go litigate again. In the meantime, if we think that digital services like Spotify are doing something that is really deceitful or not in keeping with what the regulations say, the MLC has to go to federal court and try to say this is wrong, right?
right.
And that's why we've taken, the MLC took action, NMPA has taken action on a number of fronts, which we can talk about.
Yeah,
And
let's talk about
yeah,
that. Well,
yeah.
I also just want to talk about before we get into what we're doing to fight back, let's talk about how this affects consumers, because I know that's
Oh, yeah.
also interesting.
Yeah, it is because, we're sitting here saying this is unbelievable that Spotify, the largest music service in the US, is strategically choosing to do things that lower their royalty rates that they pay to writers. Like, I can't believe that they would do that. But then we sat back and said, it's not just songwriters. It's all of their subscribers, their 44 million subscribers, because what they essentially did to those subscribers was they said, here's this audiobook, 15 hours. We're giving it to you for free as part of your 10.99 a month that you owe for Spotify's music subscription service. Then they said, actually, they didn't even tell them. That's the craziest part. They didn't tell
Mhm.
their own subscribers. They internally said, well, we're internally recategorizing all of our subscribers into bundles. So you're no longer a music service subscriber. You're now a subscriber to this bundle. You didn't choose it. We're just going to make you this. And now we're going to tell you that because of that, we're increasing your monthly subscription fee. And so you're now paying more, but you're not paying more to the songwriters and artists that you thought you were paying more to. You're paying more because we've now added audiobooks as this bundle. So in a way, what they did to their consumers and their subscribers is also deceitful. And
Right,
there's federal laws that protect consumers against these kinds of actions. You can't subscribe to something and then have that company change your subscription without you knowing, and then raise
right,
the price on you for something you never chose to opt into. And
right,
that's the
right.
problem here. They didn't offer a bundle and say, hey guys, we think this is a great bundle. Anybody who wants this, choose to move from your subscription to our new bundle. They
And
didn't
it's
do that.
not as if that money is going, it's now making a bunch of book authors rich, right? It's basically that money is going right to Spotify's. They're trying to,
Yeah, we don't know how much the book authors are getting paid here, but I will tell you, we have heard they are also very unhappy. This is
Mhm.
not about taking from the pockets of some creators and giving to other creators. This is taking
Right,
from the pockets of songwriters and finding a way to save Spotify money.
right. So
And
it's going
it's,
back into their
yes, it's going back
Spotify's.
into their pocket.
Hmm.
And, they didn't save money when they bought themselves a soccer team, when they bought themselves unbelievably expensive luxury offices in New
Podcasts.
York where they were so
Hmm.
expensive that there were stories about it. No,
Yeah, I remember.
where did they look to save money on their music service that has not been profitable? They looked to cut the royalties that they pay to songwriters who
Yeah,
make their entire business. And so,
exactly.
yeah,
Like the people that actually make the thing that you sell.
exactly.
And how is that? And just because they're bad at business, I guess we're like the low hanging fruit for like for covering them because we're so so hampered by regulation.
And that's right. And that's the problem. And again, it gets back to what we said in the beginning, which is you would think that the largest music service in the US would have as one of its goals at least being a good partner to the creators that actually drive its business and ensuring that we're growing value for the whole industry. And that we see time and
Right.
again is not the case.
Right. And the long game there is just so dumb because
It's yes,
if you squeeze the
it is.
songwriters out, like you're hurting the product that you sell in the long run. It's just hurting the quality of songwriting because it hurts the amount of people who can afford to stay in the studio and write songs. It's so short-sighted.
Yeah, and it's of all the people that you want to have good relationships with. I think songwriters are starting to realize that these empty benefits that Spotify likes to give,
Mm,
like,
yeah,
we'll add you to a playlist or we'll make a playlist of your, songs and those are nice around the
yeah.
edges, but they don't make up for the $150 million you just cut from what you pay songwriters. That is actual money that means something to creators, that allows them to create more, that allows them to support themselves. Um,
I want to make that really clear to people that we're talking about 150 million
a
less
year.
annually a
Yeah.
year. Yeah. Yeah. From these particular shenanigans that they're pulling right now. So I really want songwriters who are listening to this to understand that this is not just, a fight for a fight's sake. It is actual money coming out of their pockets. So I hope that's coming across clearly. What are some of the things that like NMPA is doing to, but in addition to the MLC litigation, what are some of the other um, sort of what are the other what is it tools or like weapons in the arsenal?
Well, there's lots of weapons and we're pulling them all, right? I mean, and for good reason. I mean, you can't let this kind of bad faith go unanswered.
Mm,
Um, a few things that we're doing. Number one, we've gone to Congress, and what we've said to them is, we worked together with the digital services, including Spotify, to pass the Music Modernization Act. That's the act that created the MLC, which pays these royalties. We strongly support the MLC. We think so many good things came out of that Music Modernization Act law, which was passed in 2018. But what this has made clear is there are still loopholes that allow digital services to manipulate the government regulations, to deceive songwriters, and there need to be fixes. And one of the things we've brought to Congress is give songwriters and music publishers a way in appropriate circumstances to withdraw from this compulsory license and be able to negotiate in a market. Because only in a market can we sit down across a table and have a true negotiation that is fair, where we can say no if what they're trying to say, we can pull our works if they're not being fair. Where if they're deceitful, we can walk away.
mm-hmm.
And that is the kind of power we've never had, but that songwriters
Right.
and music publishers should have. So that's number one. We're on the Hill. And on their own, a number of legislators have sent a letter to the Copyright Office saying you should look at this. It can't be that this kind of government regulation allows for this manipulation and the kind of deceitful action that Spotify, it can't be that this is permitted. Please take a look at this. And those Congressman Ted Lieu, Congressman Adam Schiff, who I know you know, Michelle,
Mhm.
and Senator Blackburn from Tennessee, they wrote a letter to the Copyright Office saying, please look into this. Please make sure that this can't happen. And in addition to that, on what we were talking about, consumer protection, NMPA wrote a letter to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, who helps protect consumers from kind of deceitful acts like this, and actually has really been looking at these kinds of actions, like online manipulation, consumer deceit, where they're subscribing online to things. And we said, you really should look at this. I mean, consumers, I think, need to be protected here. We think that there was a lot of bad faith, like kind of unfair manipulation of people's subscription services with no notice, with no real ability to cancel. Because remember, when they converted all of their 44 million subscribers into this new fake bundle, they got rid of the individual music subscription service. There was nothing to go back to. It's not like,
and you
yes,
actually tried this yourself, right? Like
I did. I was like, well, I don't want the bundle. I just want my premium music service. And there was no premium music service without the bundle. They literally just got rid of it. That's deception. You can't have a consumer subscribe to a product, then you automatically roll them into something else and get rid of that product and say, that's not there anymore. You can't go back to that. You're now in this bundle. And we haven't
you get their you get their shitty audio streaming service, their audiobook service, which is
you get their their audiobook service is terrible. That's the funniest part about it is if you're a music subscriber who is really a music listener and you don't listen to audiobooks, you don't want it. If you're an audiobook listener, you don't want this. It's a terrible product.
It's a terrible product. I know. I've actually tried it. It's, first of all, 15 hours is like, how are you going to get through the book?
A book. It's barely, it's not a book for a lot of the most popular books out there now. Michelle Obama's book, the Harry Potter books for kids, like those are all more than 15 hours. This service doesn't compare to actual audiobook services like Audible and others. So it's really not great whether you're an audiobook fan or not, but you had to be in it and they didn't give you a choice. So we want the FTC to look at that. We think they're going to be interested in this, particularly because they've really been looking at these kind of dark practices on the internet that a lot of these companies are engaged in to try to suck subscribers in, kind of manipulate what they're subscribing to. So we've asked them to look at that. In the same line, lots of states have similar laws to the federal laws that protect consumers. And we've referred our letter that we sent to the Federal Trade Commission to a lot of states, particularly states that care about songwriters, not just consumers, but Tennessee, of course, right? I mean, they find consumer protections really important, but songwriters are really important. California, New York, Illinois with Chicago, Georgia with Atlanta and its music scene. We've referred our letter to all of those states and said, you guys should take a look at this too.
Cool. So there's a state by state consumer approach.
Yes.
That's great. And then what about the Copyright Office?
So as I said, we've gone to the Copyright Office. A number of congressmen members have gone to the Copyright Office as well. And we've asked them to look at this. We're hoping that they will. We've gone to consumer protection groups and we've asked them to look at this as well. And separate and apart from what Spotify is doing in bundling, this has caused us to take a closer look at the Spotify platform across the board to see, well, what else are they doing here that's not appropriate? And you know what? We found a lot. We found a lot.
They were infringing like crazy, right?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I think they just thought they could get away with this. They're using lyrics unlicensed, lots of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Videos unlicensed, right? Podcasts with music that is unlicensed. And you know what? We're not going to let them get away with it anymore. So
Right.
I think you can also expect, we sent a demand letter to Spotify. Um, they sent back a letter that, was kind of a blow off of like, oh, I'll tell
Hmm.
you what, I think you can expect some action there. There is real infringement there.
Hmm.
And I think NMPA and the publishers have decided we're not going to just let them get away with these kinds of things anymore. If you're using our lyrics, if you're using our songs in videos or podcasts and you're not licensed properly, there's, you now have to face the music. Excuse the pun.
Nice. Well done. Um, and what can songwriters do? This is great that publishers have um, they have the legal teams and things to fight back in this way. What can individual songwriters do?
Yeah, there's a lot. And it'd be great to have songwriters really engaged here. I think they can be contacting Spotify themselves, right?
Mhm.
There for there aren't many. I mean, you and I know Spotify has fired
Yeah.
most of their songwriting team and their music publishing team. So, but there's some still there. And
Hmm.
we should be reaching out to them to say, like, you're not treating us fairly. You guys have to change your ways. I think we need to be writing Spotify.
Hmm.
Um, but songwriters are not just creators, they're also consumers and subscribers.
Right.
Write to the FTC, write to
Right.
your state. If you're living in California or Tennessee or New York or Illinois or Georgia or any of those, write to your state attorney general's office and say, please look at this. This is
Hmm.
not fair, not to songwriters, not to consumers and subscribers. And I'm all of those, right? Like a lot of songwriters are all of those things, right? So we could do that. And NMPA is going to make public, and we'll give it to you, Michelle, so you guys can amplify on your social
Hmm.
media how to contact all of those people.
That's
So
great. And like a template letter too would be great too. Like some kind
yes, and
of.
so we will with bullet points of what to, what are the points to make and who to reach out
Hmm.
to and where to
Great.
send. But that would be unbelievably helpful.
Yeah,
Write your
we'll totally
lawmakers,
help them.
same thing. Write your members of Congress and tell them to
Remember
get,
the music army from
yes,
the yeah. Well,
let's get the music army going again.
hmm.
Like, let's contact our members of Congress and let them know that not just, Congressman Schiff and Lieu and Senator Blackburn, but lots of others represent tons of songwriters and creators.
Hmm.
Tell them to get involved.
Right.
Um, and the Copyright Office, reach out to the Copyright Office and ask them to look at this, because this isn't a every DSP is doing this terrible thing. This is one digital service
Right.
is manipulating these government regulations in a way that is harmful to songwriters. And it can't be that we are subject to government regulation and then that government regulation can be used against us to hurt us.
Right.
There has to be a way to protect writers.
That's a
And I think
great
that the
way
Copyright
of
Office is
putting
going
it.
to look at that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great way of
You've
putting it.
taken away our freedom, right? We can't
Right. Right.
negotiate in a free market, but then protect us.
Right. Right. But that's the trade-off, right? We traded off that freedom for the protection, and yet we're still unprotected. So we're
That's
still
right.
like susceptible to these abuses. So I think that's a great way to frame it. What does this mean for the future? Like, what do you see? How will this affect the next rate setting?
Uh,
I
well,
know, it's exhausting, isn't
I mean, like,
it?
it
So
is
tired.
because it's every 5 years and
I know.
I think for Spotify, they can expect that there'll be no deal for them, that
Hmm.
NMPA and our songwriter organizations that work with us in the proceeding, we will be fighting with Spotify to ensure that
Hmm.
they can't do this, to ensure that, you know, we have the kind of protections that we feel prohibit the kind of action Spotify's taking. But for the other digital services who, look, are not perfect, but in this instance, have been doing things the right way and using these bundle categories the way they were intended, you know, we've invited them to sit down with us and say, let's negotiate. Our fight with Spotify doesn't have to be a fight with everyone.
With its services, right, in general.
We can
right.
sit down and negotiate a deal, because each of these proceedings are so expensive, right? So no,
Yeah.
it's a big commitment to litigate. We don't
Yeah,
have to
I
litigate
remember.
with the other digital services, with Amazon and Apple and Pandora and Google. We don't have to. We can sit down with them and hopefully negotiate a deal. I don't think that's possible with Spotify now, unfortunately.
Right. Unless, I mean, if say the MLC litigation works out in the MLC's favor, do you think that would kind of like curb them? Do you think that?
I hope so. I mean, the MLC, the speed at which they moved, to
Mm,
me, and I'm on the board of the MLC, but
right.
this was a decision by the MLC. The board doesn't vote on these kinds of things. We were more notified that they had looked at this and they felt that what Spotify had done was
Was
not
fraudulent.
was fraudulent, was not
Right.
in keeping with the regulations. So if a court agrees with them, that would be a great outcome, because I
Right.
think it would force Spotify to reverse course, to roll
Mm-hmm.
back what they've done, to
Mm-hmm.
pay back the royalties that they owe and that they claimed they didn't have to pay because their royalty obligation was lower because of this
Mm-hmm.
fraudulent bundle.
Mm-hmm.
That is the hope, right? That is, I'm sure, the hope of what the MLC's role is to stand in the shoes of the songwriters and publishers in protecting them when digital services do take this kind of action, right? We no longer can do this. Like, a publisher or a self-published writer no longer has the ability to go to court if Spotify is paying the MLC less than what it should in royalties. The MLC has to do that. And thankfully the MLC, we're grateful that they took the action and they took it quickly, and they knew they had to protect writers and publishers. This was a lot of
Right.
money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I think we're seeing so many of the, I remember, we were both around for the negotiations of the MMA, and we're seeing all that kind of play out, like
Yes.
the protections that we thought we had, the abuses that are of those protections. It's so interesting when you see this, when you were there at the beginning and you are seeing this play out now. It's fascinating.
But you
I
know what? We shouldn't be surprised, because
Right, right,
in 2016, Spotify was like a massive infringer. They were
right.
sending these
That's why we
conflicting
did this.
licenses to,
Right.
like, they weren't licensed for a significant amount. We did a deal with them to clean that up, to pay songwriters and publishers what they were owed. Then we get to the last rate setting proceeding. We get an actual increase. They immediately appeal it. We wind up litigating with them for 6 years while they try to lower their royalty obligation, that the judges said was what they had to pay. They said, no, we'll fight for 6 years. They lost. At the end of 6 years, they still had that royalty obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? They turn around and they find another strategy to try to lower royalties that they pay to songwriters. It's like every time
Yes, this is a
lose
unique.
that
This is
fight.
I can say this. I know you can't, but I can say this, which is that they uniquely suck.
I won't say it, but yes, I strongly agree with it. And they shouldn't. It is the most unfortunate thing that they, well, I'll say it, uniquely suck. It is.
I know, but you get it from the top, right? I mean, their founder says things like, he calls all of it content. It's
Yes. We
there's,
can create content almost for free, right? I mean, what did
almost
he
for
say?
free, right? There's
I
no
mean,
cost to us at all. I
he has
right,
no idea.
right. Like, clearly the value that he puts on the work is it's non-existent. Like, he really thinks the value's in the tech.
That's right. He sees this as a technology company.
Right.
And he doesn't see it as a music company. And that's
Right.
a problem.
It's a huge disconnect because that's what he
Yes.
sell. That's what they sell.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
he doesn't acknowledge the immense value that songwriters and artists bring to his platform. It is why his platform is so valuable. And he
Right.
doesn't acknowledge it or see it.
Right. It's like the bakery not like caring about who makes the bread. It doesn't work. And that's why I say it's such a dumb long game, because if you hurt the songwriters, who's going to write the songs that you sell?
And just to be clear, and as we're kind of wrapping up, to be really clear, this isn't unintentional. This isn't, a byproduct of a different
Mm-hmm.
strategy. Spotify has been really clear with us, with others they've spoken to. This was their strategy.
Right.
They won't
Right.
roll it back because their strategy was to make all of their subscribers roll into this bundle to reduce their royalty obligation. That was
Right.
their strategy. That
Right.
is why they're sticking to it. That's why they refuse to revert or roll back to what was or give their subscribers a choice. They don't want to give them a choice. They want
Right.
everyone to be in this bundle so that they pay songwriters less.
This was the plan.
This
Like
was the plan,
this was the plan.
unfortunately.
So we actually do have like a couple of minutes to, if there are any questions in the among people who are watching live. Jake, do we know if there are there any things that, while we have Danielle who knows everything? I would just call her and ask her if you ask me. So weren't you like my first call? I think you were my first call when this all
I,
happened.
I think
Yeah.
I think that we did speak really soon after it happened.
We
After it
spoke
became
really
public,
soon.
it was like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's this was a big deal. This was a big deal.
Yeah. It was a huge deal. And again, shocking but not surprising.
Right.
Like
I
we
should mention one other thing because I think there might be some songwriters out there looking at their statements and saying, I don't see any difference right now.
Mhm.
Like I'm
Right.
getting paid the same amount I always was. I just want to be really clear. This is coming. The way that royalties are
Mhm.
paid, what was paid, what they reported to us in March will be paid out to you guys, paid out to, if the MLC will pay out this month to publishers or to self-published writers. So if you're a self-published writer, you'll see the
You'll see
decrease
the
in
dip
royalties
in this.
this month. If you're getting paid through your publisher, it may still be a few months or a couple of months, but you will see it. Just because you're not seeing it now doesn't mean it's not impacting you. It's going to impact all of us. It's just taking a few months for what they reported in March to actually be paid out.
Right.
That's
There's always kind of a collection lag between when it shows up in one place and kind of like,
that's right. And
right.
so it's going to impact everyone, even if you're not
Right.
seeing it today.
Oof.
I know.
I was like, I think that was my first response was like, is there a oof emoji? Like why is it always them? It's always them.
Yeah, it's always them. We should learn.
Okay,
Um,
I know, I know. Well, so I think we've covered everything. Is there any, oh wait, there's one question. Hold on. It's coming through. I hope it's a good
one
one.
question.
There's one question. Because we covered so much in this. I mean, it's not, it's it's nuanced, but it's not complicated. It's
All
like
right.
you
When would we have an
understand.
outcome in the MLC court
Oh.
case? That's a great question. So I am a recovering litigator, so I can give you a pretty decent, it depends. Um, Spotify has to answer. The MLC filed a complaint in May. Spotify's answer is due in July, on July 19th. And then if assuming that, like they may file to like dismiss the case, they may just answer, we don't know what they're going to do, but it's going to be a while, right? I mean, I would say if this moves forward and this case isn't dismissed and the MLC's case goes forward, it could be 18 months before we are at a trial. So we've got quite a while to go. So we won't see, that won't be resolved right away, although the MLC filing a suit is still really important, right? Because to have a federal court say what Spotify is doing is fraudulent and that they can't do this under the federal regulations, that they have to pay us the money that they owe, would be huge, even if it's 2 years from now. It would stop them from doing things like this. It would stop other DSPs from looking at this and saying, maybe we should do that too. Set up a fake offering over here and call it a bundle, like, right? Because essentially what Spotify did was say, oh, we'll just take that 15 hours of audiobook, we'll price it at
Costs us nothing.
$9.99.
Yeah.
Right, costs us not, and we'll price it at $9.99, and now we call this a bundle. If they get away with that, what's to stop other bad actor digital services from doing the same thing? So
Right.
this is an important case, even if it takes a little while.
Right. But, and again, this is what they do. This is like the appeal. This is kind of the playbook, right? Like,
That's right.
create some chaos. It's going to take years to sort out. In the meantime, they're not paying.
At the end of the day, they lost that appeal. So
right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you. This was so great.
I wish we could do this under like good news circumstances.
I know. I know. One of these days we're gonna have something amazing, and I'll come on and we'll talk about how fabulous it is.
Exactly.
It does happen.
Are getting paid so fairly.
Unfortunately, they usually call the lawyers when it's like going the wrong way. But
when
one
it's
of these
going
days,
wrong,
I'll come on to talk about something wonderful.
Well, I hope so. You are absolutely a shining light in all of it. Thank you so much for all the work you do and for being such a great communicator about it, because that's also a big part of it is the communication. We don't know what we don't know. And I think it just really helps for songwriters to know what the context is for when these things happen. It's not fair to ask us to just kind of like fight, right? With like, yep. Spotify bad, be mad at them. That's not.
No, we talked about what songwriters could do, and I will share with you, Michelle and Sona, how to actually do that, the contacts and who to reach out to. That way, writers who want to take action can and have real ways to do that.
That's awesome. And the other thing I can add, for those writers who do get approached by Spotify to do writing camps, to do, outward facing things that sort of help promote their brand and whatever, just think, I know it's hard because we get so little. But think twice about the brand that you're amplifying, that you're helping, because they're not our friends.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And thanks to Sona, because you guys are fabulous and always so helpful in, giving a platform, educating your members. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.